And I'll be right back with the machine.
Here's a tip.
15, 18, 20.
We've had enough.
I don't know what's what anymore. I buy a coffee and they're asking for a tip.
Yeah, it has gone overboard.
It's really intimidating to say no tip.
So have we hit the tipping point?
It's not about the service anymore. It's not about the food. It's just an added expense to the customers.
We count it up and ask, who's really getting all that money?
Do you get your tips?
Oh.
Who gets the tip?
There is no guarantee that tips are actually going to workers. It's a free-for-all.
This is your marketplace. Ever hear of Secret Santa? We're setting up a store with a secret. It's loaded with hidden cameras and buried mics, all part of a marketplace tipping test. How much more will people pay for very little service?
Would you like to add a tip of 18, 20, or 25%?
What do you like?
20's fine.
I'll give you the $1 tip.
Oh, okay.
Tipping, we've all felt it. It's becoming the norm, whether we like it or not. But we want to know, are businesses taking it too far? And where are those tips really going? To find out, we're gearing up and pounding the pavement to hit 100 businesses.
The secret's all in the lid.
And documenting who is asking for a tip and how much.
You guys ready for the bill, please?
We all expect to tip at sit-down restaurants.
And I'll be right back with the machine for you. Thank you.
That's because servers used to make below minimum wage in Ontario with the assumption that tips would make up the rest. That changed in 2022. So why have tip percentages gone up? At every sit-down place we visit, tip prompts start at 15 or 18%.
15, 18, 20.
And go up to 20 or even 22%.
I guess a little more attention on tipping culture these days.
Even servers themselves are pointing it out.
Honestly, tipping culture has gotten a little bit outrageous.
Could those higher percentages be pushing us to tip more? The payment platform Square says 5 years ago, we shell out about 16% in tips. Last year, that jumps to 20%. Are you a big tipper?
I am a moderate tipper.
Mike Von Masso studies the economy of food and tipping. He's a professor at the University of Guelph.
Tipping is a social norm. It is something that everybody does. It is an expectation.
But it does feel like something has changed.
Yeah, I think we've seen an evolution in tipping culture creeping up. But in the last 4 or 5 years, probably since the pandemic, we've really seen a dynamic shift. When restaurants were shut down, we were worried about them surviving. So many of us tipped much higher because we're trying to keep these people afloat. And I think many organizations said, oh, people are tipping more, we'll do it
Keep
more.
this going.
It's not just sit-down restaurants. Check out all the tip prompts popping up at fast food places, including coffee shops
Small coffee.
and mall food courts, big chains, and independent shops.
Debit, please.
At almost 2/3 of the fast food places we visit, the terminal asks us if we want a tip. Most recommend between 10 and 20%.
Would you like the receipt?
Sure. Thank you.
At a few, up to 30%.
Go ahead.
What do you make of fast food restaurants asking for tips? Where did this come from?
There's more price pressure to keep price down, and there's more wage pressure to pay people more. So ask people for tips in a way that gives our staff a higher wage without us actually having to pay that higher wage.
Back on hidden camera, we also notice some inconsistencies. One coffee shop asks for a tip, another doesn't. One sandwich shop has a prompt, the next, nothing.
It's making us, I would say, more uncomfortable because it's gone outside of the social norm. This inconsistency is also contributing to the discomfort that many of us feel.
And get this, we find many payment systems calculate that suggested tip on top of tax.
I have thought about it, and I've thought, sometime I want to do the calculation myself, but you're sitting there in that moment and you're not going to do it. But it seems like a little bit at the time. But I can see how it adds up for people too.
Well, it does add up, and people don't think about it. Very quickly becomes another dollar or two or more that's coming out of your pocket in a time that we're feeling inflation pressure anyway. And so I think it's almost this hidden thing.
But some small businesses are giving customers a break. Ryan Hamilton owns Yow Wings in Brampton, Ontario.
It comes up automatic, and I just put no tip.
And that feels like the right thing to do.
That is the right thing to do.
He skips the tip before handing over the machine and lets people offer one if they want.
Why do you skip the tip?
Because I don't want any customer to feel obligated when they come in our establishment. It's not about the service anymore. It's not about the food, right? It's just it's just an added expense to the customer. That's what it's become now. So it's not gratuity anymore.
Do you think people are feeling more pressured now than in the past?
100%. People are struggling. You don't know, what a person's budget is. Sure, businesses are struggling too, but that's not the customer's problem. You shouldn't be looking for someone to tip you, right? But if they do so, you should be grateful and thankful. You shouldn't put a necessary percentage on what they should offer you, right? It should come from their heart, and that's when I think it's more genuine.
But it's not just customer goodwill pushing tip culture. There's some psychology behind tip creep, driven by technology.
There's no doubt that we're not only being asked for tips, for more tips in more places, we're being asked much more aggressively. And so, a little jar is fairly innocuous. Now at the point of sale, it's in your face. You have to explicitly decide not to tip. And if you look at the psychology, this sort of framing where we have the low point, the midpoint, and the high point, people feel bad about going to the bottom. I would argue that as Canadians, we have a guilt gene just built into us.
Nice.
Yeah, we want to be nice. And so I think that that's built in. But because there's an expectation that we tip, we feel bad if we don't.
So, will you speak up if asked to tip without getting any real service?
Today's actually our grand opening.
Back at our holiday shop, that's what we're putting to the test.
It's a good little stocking stuffer. Which one would you like?
These are $3?
They're $3. And we also have these adorable little mice.
You guys say Todd, right?
Yes, we do.
Some shoppers lay down the law.
Would you like to add a tip of 18, 20, or 25%? No? A lot of businesses are asking these days, so they told me that I should ask. Would you like to add a tip?
No.
But the majority agree to give us a tip just for putting an item in a bag.
You can put 18 or 20 or 25%.
20 is fine.
20 is fine. That is very generous of you.
Since you're a nice woman, I'm gonna do 18.
That is super sweet of you.
I don't know what's what anymore. I buy a coffee and they're asking for a tip. I don't know.
Time to break the news that our shop isn't what it seems.
I just want to share something with you guys. I'm actually with Marketplace, so there are some hidden cameras over here. Bill, Dave?
I knew it. Something was off.
First off, did you guys think it was weird that I asked her a tip?
I mean, we're kind of used to it now.
It was a little odd.
And did you feel pressure?
Especially if you're paying and then the person who is like the cashier is looking at you while you're paying. It's really intimidating to say no tip.
It's like it's expected.
Does it feel like tipping is losing its meaning?
Well, it needs to be something you feel good about doing, and now it's not. It's just like something you feel like you have to do. It's not a choice anymore.
And I don't want to feel guilty. I'd rather paying what I feel is fair for a service.
I actually thought most people wouldn't tip. I didn't think they'd see the value of tipping on basically no service. But it almost seemed like this is $10. Would you like to pay $11.50 instead?
You're essentially just taking a premium on it. And in many cases, that's what we're seeing happen. So if we can keep prices low to attract you and then charge you a 15 or 20% premium at the end of that experience, who wouldn't think that That's a good idea. It is unbelievable that we've sort of normalized this to this degree because we feel guilty of rejecting someone face to face.
Tipping on winter decor may sound unusual, but we are inspired by some other businesses, like this auto shop. We visit with hidden cameras rolling to get new windshield wipers installed.
Oh, there's a tip option. 10%, 15%, 20%. Is that because of the system or what's the reason that it...
I think it's because of like the service.
And at this jewelry store.
Was that a tip prompt that popped up?
They tell us their customers want a tip option.
We're restoring heirloom jewelry, things like that, and especially people want custom things. So sometimes people
I've never heard of that. Tipping is usually custom.
Yeah, and we're just at different spots. So so not an obligation by any means.
Thank you.
We even see it at a bridal shop.
It's not mandatory, but if you would want, tip the stylist. Like they tip everywhere. Now it's like that there's no meaning to it, but
Yeah.
I feel like service places you can tip if the service is good, right?
Okay, so this counts as a service place.
Kinda, yeah.
Well, I think they're trying to rationalize in that circumstance that they're asking for a tip. You can see why they get there. Oh, all these other places are getting tips. Why shouldn't we ask for tips too? Think of the social pressure in that circumstance. They're ecstatic, they've just found the perfect dress, and you're asked for a tip. Are you going to say no? Probably not. So they are leveraging that social pressure. Should they be tipped? Maybe they should just be paid more.
What about when you don't interact with anyone? In our spot check of 100 businesses, we come across self-serve kiosks asking for tips.
All right, I can tip 10%, 15%, 20%, and the tip is already calculated for me.
And even online, some places aren't waiting until you check out to ask for a tip. Look what this bakery asks for on a delivery platform.
Please use this menu item as a gratuity. And there's a $5 option and there's a $3 option.
It extends beyond food to travel sites too.
Okay, what city should we stay in now? Let's say Calgary.
Another example of how tipping is creeping up where you might not expect it.
That's wild. I've never seen this on travel sites before. I mean, I've booked hotels online, but to say we saved you some money, so give us some money back, it just seems counterintuitive.
And check this out.
Let's go with medium. Support the designer's talent.
I mean, lower than we would see out at fast food or other businesses, but 5%, 10%, 15%.
But see, look where you started there. You said, oh, it's lower. So automatically you were less inclined to push back. So that could be a strategic element there. But this goes counter to anything that this is a service. To me, it is outrageous that we're being asked to tip for online. I think unless we push back, creep is going to continue, both in terms of the amount we're asked for and the places we're asked for. If we reward the behavior, it's going to come up more and more places. To me, it's accelerating.
If people want to push back, how do they push back without affecting the person that is in front of them?
The reality is that people who are asking for tips are changing the rules, and we don't have to follow those rules.
We reach out to the Retail Council of Canada since they represent more than 54,000 businesses, including some quick service restaurants. We tell them nearly 2/3 of the fast food and retail stores we visit prompt us for a tip. But they say there's no indication of wide-scale tip prompting among their members. We also reach out to Restaurants Canada. They say a transparent tipping process is essential, and they recommend restaurants offer a range of tipping options so customers don't feel pressure, and they should tip based on their own assessment. We're on a mission, visiting 100 businesses to see how tipping has shifted.
Honestly, tipping culture has gotten a little bit outrageous.
And how customers are feeling businesses are guilt-tripping us into tipping more.
They are leveraging that social pressure
When we ask shoppers at our holiday market,
do you feel like you know where the tips go? Like who they go to?
I have no idea.
many assume the frontline staff get the tip.
I guess go to the service.
I think the workers working should get paid, not the owners.
So the tips should go to the workers, not the owners. And that should be a rule.
Yeah. That should be a
Speaking of rules, in some provinces, employers can't keep any of the tips you give. In Ontario and BC, employers are only entitled to a portion of tips if they directly help a customer. Otherwise, it's not allowed. Some call it tip theft. So, we're back undercover in Ontario to see if those rules are being followed and who keeps the extra money you're being prompted to give. At this place, workers say they don't see a cent of the tips.
Do you get these tips?
No.
You don't get?
No, we don't get.
Does the owner take them?
Yeah.
We hear it's happening at big chains too.
If I leave a tip, do you get this tip?
No.
You don't get it. Oh, do you know who gets it?
The owner.
If I leave you a tip, do you get this tip?
No.
No? Do you know who gets it?
Some cases they didn't know. In some cases they asked me, should I be getting this tip?
Mike Von Masso is a food economist who studies tipping. What does he think about employers who pocket tips?
Some of those places are actually breaking the law, but it's easy to hide, particularly at these places that are non-traditional tipping places where staff aren't even thinking that they should be getting tips.
Mike says there needs to be more transparency about where tips really go.
The perception that most of us have is that that person that we're interacting with is the one getting the tip, or at least a share of that tip. And if they're not, then again, it's going to increase our cynicism. I think it's always worth asking.
At least 2 employees at 6 different restaurants tell us they don't get their tips. We're not naming those restaurants in an effort not to identify the employees we speak with. In response, 2 of those restaurants tell us employees should be getting tips and they're investigating further. 2 say their employees are misinformed, although 1 admits to using tips to pay some business expenses, although they say they won't anymore. 2 don't respond. Ontario's Ministry of Labour has received allegations of tip theft too, nearly 800 since January of this year. But they won't say how many of those claims have been investigated. So we're asking, what's being done to protect workers? They say enforcement has been increased along with fines for those who break the law.
So rules are being broken in Ontario. But some places don't even have rules. None of these provinces or territories have protections against tip theft. In Alberta,
it would be somewhat shocking to hear very little, or maybe not shocking at all.
Carolyn Cron from the Workers Resource Centre in Calgary says there are no consequences for employers who keep tips.
There are certain demographics that are more prone to that. I can tell you that newcomers to Canada are often more subject to this type of exploitation. I can also say that the service industry is largely a woman-centered industry as well. I would like to see this province take a hard line on a living wage. So, rather than relying on inconsistent tips and the potential for those to be taken.
We hear the same thing from Sydney Bloom at the Halifax Workers Action Centre.
In Nova Scotia, there is no guarantee that tips are actually going to workers because there are no legal protections on that money. It's a free-for-all. We put out a survey of workers last year, and about 73% wrote back and said that they had some experience with tip theft. Unfortunately, as long as this legal loophole exists, there's nothing that workers can do.
We ask the ministries responsible for governing wages in Nova Scotia and Alberta what they're doing to protect workers. Both say tips aren't considered wages, so aren't governed, but they're keeping an eye on the situation. Alberta adds while tips aren't covered in legislation, theft is, and workers can report it to the police. Meantime, Sydney has a tip for those of us who want to leave one.
We really encourage customers to ask servers about the breakdown of tips, start conversations in restaurants and places where people are asking for tips about where that money is going, and just making themselves a bit more engaged in the process.
And as you're doing your holiday shopping, remember, it's your money, your choice.
It should be, you can leave whatever tip you'd like. Do you know what I mean?
They have good service, they're gonna get a tip. But if they don't, they ain't gonna get a tip.
If you don't want to tip, you don't tip.